money in it to buy it. And it's not a whole lot. It's borrowed money from Enterprise Bank, and it's cash flow.
Well, you got with you and around you guys, it's pretty stable people in there, so that makes it a lot easier to bankroll and, plan for that. So. But you're full now, aren't you? Well,
Cycle.
Hey, Josh.
That's the way it works, isn't it? So a little late, you put on stuff.
Oh, awesome. You weren't late, Josh.
I bet it does.
It's still 1 minute.
Yeah.
One time when you wanted to happen.
Nice.
Works well. HRC, that committee that they were to us, and they're,
Probably have died.
Ready to roll? It's close enough. Okay. Go ahead and call the USD 49 Board of Education meeting for Monday, September 11th to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Been moved by Board Member Oboni. Seconded by Board Member Lang. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. 7 people now.
I was going to say, something weird to say.
Yeah. Next item on the agenda is audience participation. Have anybody from the audience? No takers? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is communications from other organizations.
Other than what's...
Okay, we should have the Early Childhood Connections Policy Council and Director's Report for anybody that has any questions on those. Next item on the agenda is school spotlights. John?
We had something that was new this last week, and what's very nice is that Carla is here this evening to get, at least I want to recognize again, Carla is one of the 2 first individuals who ended up getting the Golden Apple Award that the Special Education Co-op is trying to end up starting and recognizing. Now, I know that she is a special ed instructor at Victoria High School, but I think that Hayes should end up still saying she's ours because of the number of years that she ended up helping Hayes School. So for her to end up being one of the two at the beginning, very happy for her, very proud of you. And so I want to end up recognizing that. The other ends up being Donna Hansen, special education paraeducator at Hayes Middle School. And again, for her extra work always of trying to end up making things better for those students. It was one of those cases where very nice things were said last week in that presentation when we had our special ed superintendent co-op meeting. And that's when those awards were actually handed out at that time. But again, thank you for being here this evening.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, this is a good school district to work for, and couldn't have done it without the support of everybody. You know, it's growth for everybody.
Very good. Thank you.
Also want to point out that there's a HOBY conference. We had a couple of Hayes High School students that participated in a 4-day U. O'Brien Youth Leadership Seminar. They went to K-State campus, and that was something that Connor Olson and Isabel Braun represented a small number of incoming juniors for the purpose of learning better communication, leadership, and social skills. So it was very nice that they were able to participate in that. The solar eclipse, of course, that's something at a national level got a lot of attention, but it was wonderful that we ended up having around 40 students that were able to take advantage of this even to another level and went north. They ended up going a little bit further north so they could actually see a full eclipse. And for them, the weather held out, and I understand that they had a very good experience. We ended up taking great advantage of it here in Hayes as well, and driving around I was able to see that a good number of the schools still tried to end up it was a strange day, though, if everybody remembers, as far as the cloudiness made it. I don't think it hurt it. You know, it actually made it so you could still see the eclipse, but it may have helped things be a little safer in case people weren't using their glasses. I guess it made it a little bit safer that way, but it was a great learning experience. We ended up having the Hayes High School boys soccer records that were added to and surpassed. Not just a matter of the boys soccer team winning, you know, the Titan Classic in Wichita, which is fantastic unto itself. That's great to end up competing at that level and start the season that way of winning. But then as well to end up having, let's see, the soccer team, we have 2 athletes. Ethan Nunnery scored 5 goals in the tournament opener at Wichita and makes him the all-time leading scorer with 52 career goals, which is amazing. Previous holder was Silas Hibbs, that was 47 goals. And Zach Wagner also added to his record for his assists with 35 total assists to date. So really for the soccer team, that's just fantastic to start out the year and have a couple of our athletes do so well even at this particular point. We also had high school alum was in the news. Congratulations to Lance Mullen, who was featured in one of the mechanics on the Discovery Channel, which is called Gear Dogs. He is helping car owners flip vehicles, and he's been doing that since 2012. I am curious, and maybe Marty knows, maybe someone else here, when might he have graduated? Do you remember? I mean, is Lance older or?
Give me 5 minutes, I'll look it up on Power School.
Okay, I was asking others here, and
I guess probably 8 years ago.
it could be 8 years ago. Okay.
You don't remember all those, Marty?
Okay, 2005 from. Okay. Very good. I think that's it for the
Any
spotlights.
questions for John on the school spotlights?
The other spotlight, which is tremendous, but I'm going to save that, and at the end of close to the end of the meeting, is going to be about academics, and we have some academic news that will be spotlighted at that time.
Very good. Next item on the agenda is the report of the superintendent. Turn it back over to John.
No, I'd say that one of the most important things to report, and I try to keep those very specific, this one is about our, safety and security dealing with technology. We ended up having something very scary last Friday. It was at 6 in the morning, in between 6 and 6:30 in the morning on Friday. We ended up having a cyber attack. We ended up having ransomware that affected our servers. It looked like all of our servers. And so immediately there was work through that morning trying to figure out what is going on, what happened. I can tell you that there was no data that was pulled, okay? It was just a matter of encryption. So when we're saying ransomware, they encrypted the data so we couldn't actually access it ourselves. It wasn't a matter that any data was stolen. The other piece ended up being that it appears that it started with the server for our special ed server. Possibly because we have a remote access for another person to help with that and putting in information. And it's being rebuilt now, and it's not going to have the remote access on it because they feel that was the weak point of our security, and we're going to definitely get rid of that and not have that on there at this time. We were able to have backups for everything. So as far as losing anything, it was very minimal. What was lost probably was lost the morning of that Friday, or there is one server that there was some loss, and that was at the middle school, but fortunately it was at the front end of a school year with it was the yearbook information for the middle school instead of midway through the year or into the year. And they have that in answer of getting backups for it as well from this point on. So we were extremely fortunate that it was not something that information was stolen. Also fortunate that it was something that we had very good backups, and that was good. We did go ahead and make the report to the police. Becomes an issue of report really is to the FBI too. It ends up being identified as it's identified by the FBI as a terrorist attack. When you end up having this information as it happened as ransomware, because basically they are technically holding you ransom, and they want you to pay if you want to get your information back. So at this particular point, it's a matter of we don't feel that we ended up losing, except for time and energy of the work over the week, Friday and through the weekend to get to this point. The only thing that's left in working on this that I'm aware of is the backup connection and work for the middle school's yearbook server, which still needs to be done, and then also the work on that special ed server. We need to end up getting that completed. So if you have any questions, that's it was very, it's always scary when you end up having that kind of a cyber attack. It's just nice that the different things that were in place that our tech department had put us back in service for a good part of it, even that morning. Before the day was over for Friday. So.
We did talk about possibly having a security, an audit, so that we're checking to make sure. And so I know Scott was going to reach out to other school districts, or if anybody knows of a good way to do that, because we want to make sure, we think we're doing a good job, and this was, like I said, a good test that we were for the most part able because of our backups, but we are looking at that also.
And you might check the university because we've been audited by all institutions in the state have been audited, required audit, but we've been going through it and have had to, everybody has to pass a security training, which is an online training module, and have your certificate or we cut off your services. So that's the incentive to do it, or you can't work together. So it's kind of it, but you may check there because the state has implemented required audits to be sure that all state related systems are protected. And maybe it's the sort of thing to bring to KSD about what we're trying to do.
Okay.
A systemic-wide audit is
Good. Any other questions for John? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda to include the board meeting minutes for August 21st, 2017, the special board meeting minutes for August 24th, 2017, the special board meeting minutes for August 28th, 2017, approval of bills in the amount of $2,797,529.85, personnel transactions, financial reports to include the clerk's report, investment report, and petty cash report. And I believe that is it. Entertain a motion to accept those.
I'll move to accept the items listed as presented.
Been moved by Board Member Adams, seconded by Board Member Waddell. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the LED lighting project update. I think Rusty is here to kind of give us an update on that.
Well, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think you've got it where you can see sort of what we had previous in the pink and then sort of what we worked on this summer through summer yellow. So we were 2 years, a little over 2 years, getting to where we're at. The areas that are shaded green are the areas that we're currently working on right now, and then the areas that are hash marked in green are the areas that we're looking at doing. We just found the lights that we wanted for our shop areas, especially in the welding area where we have a lot of smoke and stuff. We want to make sure that something was sealed up good, that we didn't have to do a lot of cleaning on. So we're just in the process of getting quotes for those. So about 2,000 lights in that 2 years is about what we changed out. The usage on bulbs and stuff has dropped. I mean, this was our biggest building with the oldest fixtures and the most change in ballast and bulbs, and that's completely probably a fourth of what it was just in doing this one building. Our goal after this one, looking at sort of what the bond plans are to move toward Roosevelt. Middle school's had enough additions on it that the lighting there, we've done some work in the hallway there when we've done the HVAC upgrade in the middle school, so Roosevelt would be the next one to start looking at doing upgrades in.
Very good.
That's pretty much where we're at, unless you guys have some questions. I know last year we gave you some figures sort of to compare. I'm really anxious to see what this winter brings. Now that we've got about the other half of it done. So.
Very good.
Just a question about the white areas.
The white areas right now, like the wrestling or the weight room, that one's already got T8s in it. They're only like 5 years old, so we're sort of holding off on it. The room, I think it's 503.
Mm-hmm.
That's being used for a storeroom right now, and we couldn't really get in there. I understand that it's going to be used for academics next year, so we'll change it out right then. They're just what they're being used for right now and sort of where we're at. There's a few little office spaces in there, that storerooms and stuff that we haven't changed that we'll get to. The office area, it's covered in part of the bond as far as changing all that in there, so we didn't really want to go through and do anything, especially if we're looking at an HVAC upgrade in there. So I'm just trying to coordinate what we're doing with what we're projecting for bonds.
And I'd like to end up saying, I know that John was here at an earlier time when this was presented, but I want to give John Conger again that recognition as far as if you see the yellow, and that was done by one person and a helper. I mean, really, it ended up being he worked diligently through the summer to try to get that. And please understand, you're not talking about switching a light bulb. You're talking about the electrical work of having to change out the whole unit. He's actually doing electrical work on each of these rooms and trying to switch it out. So really, he did a fantastic job in the last 2 years of getting this switched over. And I do think that we're going to be seeing benefits financially in just a year or two. It's not that the turnover, I know the front end of the money that goes in to buy the the fixtures and the light bulbs, it is great, but I think it's definitely going to be the savings in the electricity in just a year or two.
Very good. Any other questions for Rusty? Perfect. Thanks, Rusty. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, the KASB June 2017 policy recommendations.
You know, it is so different from what was shared with you at the last meeting, because the last meeting was 20-some pages. This one's like 4. And the reason why is because everything was listed on the first one, what KSB was possibilities of what could be done. Going through this with the federal compliance, reading through that part of it, which is about 2 pages at this point, identifies what we've read through this, Tracy in particular, of trying to list what we probably really need to, and when I say need to, they're identifying there are parts of this that has to be really in our policy. So it's not a matter of choice. It's just that the other 15 pages were a lot of choices that we could have ended up having there. This is what was actually listed. I don't know if there's anything in particular in that you wanted to highlight, Tracy, on those 2 pages, the first one?
Just real quick before we get into that, first paragraph, 3rd line, starting with that sentence, the board designates the. Is that going to be your title? Is that going to be your name specifically?
That will be my name.
Okay. So then.
So it would be the board designates Tracy Kaiser.
Okay.
That was really the only thing that we're not currently doing, was we did not have a federal programs coordinator district contact name. So that would be myself, and then everything else we're already doing. It's just getting it into a policy to show that everything else we're already compliant with.
Would it be better to put a position title in there as opposed to a person?
That was.
Oh, is that your question?
Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, we can.
Well, because if you take a job running a big old Fortune 500 company or something, we have to cycle back throughout the name rather than just attaching it to the position. So that's what I was going to bring up.
Was there anything other that you wanted to point out, Tracy? Then the wellness policy piece, you'll notice if you read through there, there's one piece that we've not been doing, and we have not identified a board member to be part of this committee. We have the committee. There has been the meetings, but there has not been a board member. And at the beginning of the year, when you have all these different committees that's listed, this is not one that's been identified, Lance. So we need to consider that and probably get someone identified for the wellness committee.
That first sentence, we need to add an O. It says NT, but NT instead of but not necessarily.
Okay.
I guess I have a question about this policy. Is this going to, just look at it and not think about what we've had before, is it going to require a greater amount of activity, or it looks like it's not just, oh yeah, we've got something, the triennial review, but now it looks like, yes, we're doing something, we're public, we're advertising, we're doing all that. So I'm asking, I guess, when it comes to enacting the policy, it's going to require more than we've done in the past.
Actually, it could be more communication.
It seemed like communication.
Yeah, but from the standpoint of what we've been doing, we have been doing what they're expecting from this. Actually, and I get ahead of myself a little bit, but just like and I don't know how long ago it was at the middle school or other schools where, you know, any kind of vending machines have been pulled. I don't know if board members are aware, but there's only one school that has vending machines right now. It's a high school. So much had happened in just the last, since actually it's been further back than I want to, probably 7 years. It's probably go back that far of the wellness push from not just the state level, but at the national level that's been pushed down as far as considering. There are a lot of things that have changed. I think we are actually, my communication and understanding of what our wellness committee has been doing is quite good. It's probably very well put that we probably aren't communicating that with all of our staff and with the community as far as what they're what they've done and what their push at this point ends up being. So I'd say that may be one of the first things on our agenda that we have for the committee meeting.
And in the fifth paragraph, it says, unless it's supposed to be plain lines of outer space. Yeah. It's
Oh, the
supposed to be
9,
plain,
yeah.
Unless you want it to be plain lines.
I don't think it's supposed to be. The other piece that was pointed out, because we had administration look at it a little bit last week when we had our meeting, coming out of it, Marty had shared, and right on target, that vending machine piece, to end up even having monthly, because they were saying it should be monthly reports. We could do that, but it'd be redundant, because it's at best it's only we're going to have information quarterly, so the change in information is not going to be enough. It'll be a quarterly information is the frequency that we'd probably be able to do that, and that can be done, but that's identified too as one of the changes. When at the very last paragraph it says a quarterly report, well, from KSB it didn't say quarterly, it said monthly, and we're just quarterly makes more sense for what we have.
And what is it that, what is the vending machine report? I mean, just what's been purchased from?
Right. Right. Just a matter of the information and the funds that tie to it. Right. So. Now, I did not have any intention for you to have action on this. You could have, but there's no need to, because it was so different from the last board meeting. Would like very much at the next meeting to end up having action on it. The other item that we brought up at the last meeting ended up having to do with procedural with nursing mothers within the district, whether classified or certified. But in that conversation, in a little bit that we checked on it, it's not required. It's not something that has to be in as policy. It was recommended as far as a possibility if you wanted to include it. For our district, it appears we've had a number of examples in our district in many different buildings, and at this point really don't feel that it necessitates to then as well have that policy placed there. So we've done well with it, and that's why it's not listed as recommendation to put down as policy.
I apologize to take up time with this, but on the wellness policy.
Mm-hmm.
So we're adopting this to try and reduce childhood obesity. That's where the federal government is leveraging this down on us, because there's no evidence to ever support that schools promote childhood obesity.
I would say that the first part of your statement's exactly right. It came down from partly from Mrs. Obama, at an earlier time years ago, and it has trickled down effect clear to the states of having much done at a state level. It's not a matter of whether or not it has any proof. It's more a matter that we're told we're going to do it.
So I just like to understand these as we
Yeah.
go through. I know there's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
But it just seems like, okay, the family unit is failing. So therefore, we're going to burden the school districts with spending more money, more time, more energy to try and attend to issues that they haven't contributed to and can truly do very little about.
Josh, when this started about 5 years ago, when you really had the food service directors have to change their menus completely and all the work that had to go into that, you would have enjoyed the conversation I had with the Harrington food service director. It was a very passionate conversation. And I think most of them in the state had that, because it was just a tremendous amount of work that had to be done based upon, again, maybe there was good intentions, that part of it, but there's a lot of people that feel just like you feel. But it wasn't a matter of if you like to do it, you may do it. It was you will do it if you want your federal funds. So
Thanks for allowing me to get clarified on that, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Very good. Any other questions on the policy recommendations? Okay. So we'll move on and vote on that at the next meeting, I believe. Is that right? Okay.
I would recommend that, yes.
Okay.
And it gives that time that if you found anything else, or if there was other questions, we have that time to end up bringing it up and addressing it before then.
Very good. Next item on the agenda is an update on negotiations.
We have two different updates. One of them ends up being that at our last meeting, and it was nice that Mandy and Lance was able to attend that with the teacher group, we ended up having a plan. I mean, there was something that came out of it as far as a plan with the teacher group. We came out of that meeting, and basically since that time, the teachers have voted on that. Amazing. I mean, it ended up being, I think, 198 to 5 is what the vote was, so very much in favor on that side of it, and it will require conversation in our executive session on that part of it. So that's where we are with the teachers part of it. With the custodial, our last meeting was actually that same day, and in that meeting we had tentative. Pretty much everything was set. There was a little bit of talk as far as the increased percent for their pay. There was differentials that was pretty much agreed upon. There was some wording changes that was agreed upon at an earlier point. But at the front end of that particular meeting, it was some of the wording that had to do with health insurance that had been tentatively agreed upon earlier was then pulled back by the custodial group, saying that we don't agree with that now. Which, well, at that point didn't know where we're at with the custodial group in negotiations, because it pretty much stopped that point. We have not had a meeting since. Now I know that the custodial group has met. They did meet last week. So I'm just saying at this particular point, that one's, I'm sharing what I know. That's about what I know at this particular point. Disagreement as to the wording change, probably more than the pay. You know, right now we're and the wording had to do with the health insurance. You know, that's what it was dealing with. The wording states state plan. And that was something they had agreed tentatively to take out at an earlier point, but then said, no, we want that to stay in. Well, a lot's happened in 2 weeks, and at this point I still don't know exactly where that stands, but that's what I know at this particular point. So that's the update on negotiations at this point. We have, of course, there's time in executive session that we must talk on those issues.
Very good. Moving on to new business. Next item on the agenda is the Hayes High School HVAC system.
The reason why Rusty, Lindsay, and I feel very much that this needs to be talked on is because it can be forgotten. Please come up, Rusty. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood this isn't different than what we've talked about even at a prior point. And what I mean by different, when we were talking about what is our capital outlay responsibilities as far as keeping things updated and in good shape, where are we with that at the same time of talking about a bond election and that part of it? Because they both still are in play. Just because a bond election is in play, possibly will be voted on November 7th, does not mean that we just do nothing when it comes to capital outlay items. And the one item that was really prioritized and in conversation did not end up being part of the plan for the bond election was the HVAC system at the high school. So the details, if you share, Rusty.
Well, going back to previous board meeting where we met before, the plan's fairly similar to what I talked to you before. The area shaded in green. are areas that I want to look at, new equipment and taking over with controls. The area shaded in yellow, that equipment is standalone equipment. It's rooftop units mostly in those areas, and I just want to take them over with controls, put in new controls so that we're off of the pneumatic. And then there's about 3 areas in the building that we use for summer that when I turn that individual room on, I'm actually turning on a whole area to do it. And if I just take those over with controls, that would eliminate me, like, there off of room 133, you can see the 2 rooms that are shaded there. Well, to turn that two rooms on, I actually have to turn on 148, 147, 143, all that whole area right there comes on. And depending on where the thermostats in the rooms were left, they may run or they may not run. If somebody had them turned down, if we didn't catch it, or they came back in, whenever I enable it, they're going to run. So even though that room's not occupied, if I take those areas over when they're occupied, we can control those rooms individually then. Still looking at the commons areas, looking at the bigger spaces right now that basically we're using through the summer. The classrooms, lawn goes through, that's going to take a lot of work, especially if they're doing anything, including changing the sizes of the rooms or anything. And unlike the lights that we can just take down and put back in, the HVAC, once we get it set, it's going to be a little harder to size it to the room. So I'm basically sticking to spaces where I don't think there's going to be any change in the space.
And there's also work that's being done in communicating between high school and middle school of next year. With this work being done, some things are not going to be able to be done next summer at the high school. We may have to use the middle school facilities for that, which typically would be at the high school.
And I'm a little bit ahead of myself on this, come back at a later date, but we're actually meeting on the 14th with DLR and BCS to start putting this in place. So I'll have more information after the 14th as far as timeframes. I know Mr. Pallister and Mr. Schwartz. I never call you by your last name, so I'm going to have a hard time with it. Anyways, we're going to meet after the 14th so we can hammer some of that out. So, straw. I'll give it said. Straw.
It's strong.
As soon as I started to say it, it was like totally blank.
You called me Mr. Schwartz or?
Now, you had a funding plan for this as well, correct?
Correct. Ben, actually, when I first came here, we had some concerns at Roosevelt. Was basically budgeting about 250 sort of in a reserve there for that in case something went wrong. It's been working. We've done some taking over the controls there. Everything's working like it's supposed to. The wells, once we got that taken care of, it started working. So that money that I've been putting in that reserve basically for some kind of large HVAC failure, we've been putting into an account toward the high school, and right now that account's at like $520,000 that we've got in there, plus the $250 that I've got budgeted for HVAC this year. So we're somewhere in the $770,000 range for this year to look at that. So.
Which, the areas in green, how much do you think that's going to cost?
When we originally looked sort of at the offices, the weight room, and the gyms, we were in that 700,000 range. So I don't know that I'll get like the library, and my hope is to get the, well, I had the multi-purpose room figured into that first budget figure too, and then we realized that all I had to do is take it over. It was a lecture room. I hadn't flipped.
That included the office the first time, and now you're not including it?
I'm not including the office because with
Okay,
the bond,
right.
that could really change. So
Sure.
we left that part of it out.
Okay.
And the office is actually grouped to where when you turn the office on, it's, you know, when you enable it, it is just the office. So now I'm still running cooling tower water through the entire building to do that, but all we're doing is pumping water. It's not like you're actually doing any refrigerant to that water. It's just whatever the cooling tower, whatever temperature you're getting off the cooling tower. so it's basically just being pumped.
Are you looking at a 2 or 4 line system?
Actually, in all these areas, they would be rooftops independent of the, so we could run them independently, especially on the gyms and stuff. It would be a lot easier. The changeover from
All the green and yellow
from
are
air
independent?
conditioning to heating is real simple. The makeup air on them is real simple, so that's,
So they'd each be pretty much their own separate systems?
they would.
Okay.
Other questions?
You can
We're
stay
good.
seated.
Next item on the agenda is the capital outlay project plan.
Yeah, I know that, I mean, I can address it, it's just a matter that with Rusty, it's work that we've talked on is, when we were working a year ago and trying to identify or develop what that capital outlay plan would be, if you remember, we did get somewhere. We actually did identify a company to end up assisting us with that. We just never did actually offer a contract at that point, which may be very good, because from the standpoint of waiting, dependent upon what may occur, would end up, changing the whole scope of what that plan is for capital outlay. What I'm saying is, you can have a list that's a page long of what needs to be done with capital outlay, but a bond election that could pass could make that list quite short at that point. Changes really the scope of what you're dealing with, and then as well that maybe even change the prioritization that you'd end up having for it. So it goes in line of saying, okay, we have the, talking about the HVAC system for the high school. What we want very much is to end up showing we're still working on things. We're trying to do exactly what was pressed by our goals up there. We had the goals. One of them is dealing with that capital outlay. To end up doing any wait mode is not, in my opinion, or your opinion, is what I've heard, healthy. We want to end up still have something that we're working with. But we also know that that was prioritized even a year ago. We're trying to move ahead with that, and depending upon in the next months, we will definitely be looking at that plan, the capital outlay project plan, to identify what that may be at this point, because it could change tremendously in November or December at that point, what we're working from. There are many different projects that exist that would still benefit our district that's not directly linked to the bond election. And what I mean by that is, one example could be the parking lot, at the high school. Keep on doing sections of that. It's very expensive. But trying to do that, and we're doing it piecemeal. Summer, maybe we'd have enough money to do a bigger section instead of just the smaller sections of trying to get that done. But that would be one example of trying to end up making those improvements. So that's, I guess, questions, if anybody has that, as to what we're trying to work from in the preparation through this year. Okay. And it's so important, too. One of the items that was agreed upon, I mean, when you had, at that time, 6, when you had 6 board members that ended up approving to take 2 mills off of that capital outlay plan and go to 6 instead of 8, so that there was not as great of increase, with the mill levy. Having enough money, saying we have enough money with that to end up still tending to this capital outlay project plan. We want to be able to put that plan together, come back to you and show what's being prioritized. This is how much money we have on an annual basis, and this is how we plan on doing it over the next 5 years, next 10 years, of trying to end up identifying these projects and get them finished. Get them actually, that's our intent, having that prepared. But there's no need to do it, I'm just saying, no need to do it now. we're waiting a few months to end up seeing, because it would change it tremendously if things would happen, so.
Any other questions on the capital outlay project plan so far? Thanks, Rusty. Next item on the agenda is the assessment updates, and I think Shanna has some information for us on that.
I do. If you remember, in June, I shared with you the math and ELA state assessment scores. We received those scores the end of May. Our students in the spring take the summative assessment in reading, math, ELA, math, and science at different grade levels, 3 through 8 for math, and ELA in 10th grade. And then in science, it's 5th, 8th, and 11th. 2 years ago, it was the first assessment, so we piloted it. So this past spring in 2017 was the first official results, and they were not made available in May because committee at the state set cut scores, and then the state board had to approve those, which is the process for all the subject areas. But we did receive them this past month, and I wanted to share with you that at the 3 grade levels, this is a median score. The students are asked questions about data in narrative form, equations, graphs, tables, and diagrams, and they have to do some sorting, ordering, matching. Some tech-enhanced items are on that assessment, and our students in all 3 grades scored above the state median, which is always, what we're looking for. We're looking for that growth, but we want to know also that what we're offering and that our instruction is aligned to our state standards, and that we do it at a level that exceeds the state. So that's the bar graph. You can see that. Then second page of that, the target, there are 4 performance levels that, again, the cut scores were determined, and you can see those shades there. The target is level 3. We want all of our students to be at level 3 or above. That means they're where they need to be in performing at grade level for the standards in science. And you can see that our shades of 3 and 4 exceed those at the state. Of course, we have areas for growth, and we'll continue to work on that. But it's exciting. I wanted to share that because, as I shared when we did math and ELA, we were at or above the state median scores as well. So that's exciting. It's great for all of our schools and the students and staff. So I wanted to share that. It gets better and better, though. I do want to ask Marty to come to the table. This is a celebration for us as a district, K-12, but the high school, for obvious reasons, have a vested interest in these ACT scores. We did have an admin meeting last Wednesday, and I know they were embargoed, these scores, till last Thursday, so we couldn't share them officially with our admin team, but I know Marty also thanked his colleagues because it is a K-8 process, and we work on preparing students for the next level at all grades. However, you can see here, and I'm going to just, hang on, let me adjust the slides. If I go to 100, it gets a little large. And you have it in front of you, I know, as well. The first table up there is really 5-year trends on the percent of students who meet college readiness benchmarks. So in English, math, reading, science, there are benchmarks. For English, it's 18. For math, it's 22. Reading's 22, and science is 23. And so these are the percentage of students that we had versus the state that met those benchmarks. So if you look at 2017, that's in bold here. 78% of our students in English compared to 69 at the state level, 60 in math compared to 46, 59 in reading compared to the 54, and then 53 to 41 in science. The percent that met all 4 at Hayes High, 42% versus 29 for the state. So that's that first table, and that again is benchmarks that are set so that indication of students being successful at their first year of college. Then the next graph there, chart, basically is the ACT, the average ACT scores. And so you can see for 2017, the English, math, reading, science, and composite across the board, that's what's highlighted there. They are above the state scores, and overall the composite is our highest in history that we can find on record, and Marty's done the research, so we'll get to that, Barbara, out here in a second. But it's something to celebrate, because KASB, I don't know if you saw at the end of last week, the state came out with some publication, some communication that said, you know, the state alone went down, and so they felt like it was something that we needed to focus on, and not as much of a celebration as we knew was coming for Hayes High, because we knew how our kids had performed. So it is exciting. Kansas, though, even though as a state we went down, we still topped the national average when we talk about meeting the benchmarks for college ready. So as a state, Kansas is still doing fine. But as a district, we're very excited with these scores. And then below that are the nationwide ones. So you can actually compare. So our school is 22.4 in English, 21.1 as a state, 20.3 nationwide average. And then math is right below that, 22.9. We're above that with the state at 21.3 and the nation at 20.7. And then you can read through those. I will point out the other thing is most college-bound students in Kansas take the ACT. Kansas has an estimated 73% of graduates take it. Nationwide, it's a lower 60%. And we've talked about this before. At Hayes High, you figured nearly 80% of the students, the last year's graduating class, took the ACT. So we have more kids even taking it than on average, and they are performing above those others in the state and nationwide.
Do they release state rankings
Oh.
for school districts?
Actually, well,
I know we've
Marty,
asked
you,
that.
not really, but Marty can speak on, you know, the award that Hayes
Yeah,
High
we're going to talk
received.
about that. So they do award
Last-
schools, exemplar schools,
Yeah.
based on some of that data. And if you remember, Hayes High, we were a recipient in the spring. And so that, they do it in recognition ways versus, I think I've asked, I don't think we see any comparable data to other districts within the state. This chart here with the numbers, and Marty, I appreciate you highlighting so that you can see, you found data back to, you can speak about this because you put this data together.
The earliest data I could find was 93, 94. I know we took the ACT long before that, but so I called ACT.org, and they don't have any records anywhere near that long. So that's our latest data that we could find, and so it's kind of interesting to see how different groups of kids do. And the yellow represents the highest score in those 24 years. The green represents, yes, green represents
Second highest,
second,
yeah.
and blue is third. So last year's group was exemplary. The year before did quite well as well.
Mm-hmm.
The exemplar award from ACT.org was actually based on the participation and the activities that we did and the scores from 2016, not last year. So we wondered, you know, what do you do to top the year we had 15-16, because we were really very proud of that too. And by golly, there you have it. And now the principal and me goes from one day to the next day say, what do we do next? You know, we just keep working and doing those things we think and many times know work, and continue to do our best. You know, I warned my site counsel, and John was there. Of course, he knew the scores and I knew the scores at that time, but I said, you know, we're going to announce tomorrow the scores, but I caution you to, you know, you can't go up every year. The higher your score gets, and it's just more and more difficult every year. But the kids did a wonderful job last year. We actually had about 34 kids score 26 and above. Normally, 23, 24, 26, something like that. So last year's kids just really did a wonderful job.
Well, and you know, Marty, I was looking, and what the ACT will say, if you are wanting to increase your scores, it recommends making core curriculum a priority. And, you know, I know we do that, and I know you have, at the high school, the administration works with the departments. You build in department time so core areas have that time to make it a priority. Make sure they're taking the right kinds of courses. The counselors spend endless hours, and that's a big part of the individual plans of study as we move forward. You know, we're talking about the assessment score, but our measures in the new accreditation are going to be about post-secondary success, individual plans of study, graduation rate, social emotional well-being, and then kindergarten readiness. So we'll talk about those things as well, but making sure students take the right kinds of courses courses for them, and then evaluating the rigor of the courses, plan guidance activities around, their college and career aspirations, what kids want to do, making sure that all lines up. So I know a lot of that is work that you all do at Hayes High, your office counselors, your teachers, so that's a big part of why we're seeing that the kids are seeing the success they are as well, though.
We've been asked several times by different schools, what are you doing differently? And I don't know that we do anything differently, but I don't think you should have a one-pronged approach to it either.
Right.
I do believe that good counseling, and sometimes the easiest thing for a counselor or a principal to do is say yes when a kid wants to dodge out of a rigorous class. That's not the best thing for all kids at all times. We have to judge those kids and their situations individually, and we keep kids in rigorous cores. We just have fewer and fewer requests to get out of challenging curriculum than we have ever had, and I think that it's a change in culture. I also believe that trust from the kids and the parents is very, very important. When we say we know it's tough, we understand that, we understand it's heavy load. I think they trust that we're not trying to hurt their kid. I think they trust that rigor and hard work and developing a strong work ethic and focus is probably healthy for them. I do agree that our cores having a common plan every other day is part of that success. We bring in ACT prep a few times a year. We've changed how we do our ACT prep course in the summer this last year as well. Again, you tinker with things that you feel you can improve on, but protect those things that you feel have worked well. So it's wonderful. It was wonderful.
You've almost known too long though, because you were excited, but now you're starting to think, okay, how can we do better next year?
I was excited for about 5 minutes, and I was thinking about next year. Actually,
right.
But.
Good.
No, I found out about 2 weeks prior to release, and so that was hard to hang on to without. Sure.
Well, you looked at the letter. See, I left it lay on the desk. I thought I'll just wait instead of not looking at it.
You're surprised.
But I would say for everybody here and for public to understand, at a high school level, I know that colleges, universities look very, very much at community service now too. They look at your grade point average. But that ACT score still is one of those really major items that you, even if there's universities and colleges that say, oh, not as much as used to, I think you got to understand there is so much emphasis that's placed on that ACT score, and that indicates something that's very important, something that Hayes High should be Hayes Schools should be very proud of having that kind of success.
With nearly 80% taking.
Right.
That's
the other
high.
issue. There are some school districts who do not push it that hard, and that percent just isn't there. They end up having 60%, 40%, in some school districts that just take it. That makes a big difference as well when you're trying to consider how well is actually the school, because you could play that out. My gosh, take your top 40% and have look at their scores with the ACT. Exactly. That's going to look a lot different than if you had 80% or if you got to a point where you really pushed that every student took it in one way or another, so that they have their score.
I love the uptrend. That was fantastic. Something I don't understand is on the 5-year trends, percent of students who met college readiness benchmarks. So 78% met English, 60 math, 59 reading, 53 science, but only 58 kids that took the ACT met all 4. How is that number? I mean, it's so much lower than what.
It might be a benchmark score. Here it doesn't say what it's the percent that met all 4. I'd have to figure that, The 78% were 78 of them met a benchmark score of 18. In math, that means 60% met the 22 benchmark score.
Well, statistically, that's very possible.
Yeah.
Because they're talking about hitting all 4 at one time.
Right.
Yeah, it seems a little
Probably
strange,
a formula.
Josh, but that's probably a believable number. The other thing I'd like to remind people, and this is the funky thing about all those statistics, not the scores, but the benchmark scores. Curriculum, when the kids fill out their ACT bubbles, everything is self-reported.
Survey, yeah.
So they ask the kids, what was your sequence of courses in math? And what was your sequence of courses in science,
Right.
language arts, and it's all self-reported. It was interesting, and I'll tell you why I say it's kind of funky, and it's nice to see our scores higher than the state, don't get me wrong, but they might be much higher or about the same, and the state's all self-reported. But there were, I want to say 17 or 18% that had 2 or fewer science credits, but you can't graduate from Hayes High with less than 3. You know, but the kids reported they had 2 or less sciences.
Right.
Well, no Hayes High
Good.
grad had less than 3 credits in science. It's all self-reported. They could say that they took the most advanced classes in the world, and perhaps they didn't. There's no check on that. It's all self-reported that morning.
Yeah.
It's just kind of interesting data, and you hope that most of it's true, but not necessarily always, probably.
Okay. Now, is that a concern at all? That 52%? So if my math is right, 139 took it, 42 met all 4. That's 58, or 139 that met all 4. And is there more to the readiness benchmarks besides just the score? Is it some of the reporting, some of the other things that factor in, or is it score based only?
I don't understand your question quite, I guess. Would I like to see 80%? No, absolutely. I think that
Well,
we
obviously
get more
there's-
kids to meet that benchmark. Obviously, that's a good thing too, honestly.
When I look.
I think when your scores go up, your sub-test scores and your composite, naturally, you're going to get more kids into that area. So I think that's what we focus on. But just some interesting data that they collect.
Okay.
But you weren't saying the whole number is 42. It's
No,
42%
which is 58.
of the,
Met all
okay.
4
Okay.
yeah, of those at the benchmark
All right.
level.
Well, I want to say good work to the district on looking at the science assessments where we're at. It's a nice trend that we're above, and we've got that many in the 3-4 level, which is good. I guess that'd be nice to see that grow as we move into what we know what the students expect. And particularly kudos to your leadership and your team, Marty, to bring that up. To bring it up, but also to have a system in place in school that consistently is emphasizing excellence in learning. Because that doesn't just happen in a year, it takes years to build a team like that.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Marty.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And then my last slide was just pointing out that those were some of the objectives to me, monitoring the assessment results, so we share those when we get them. And then the middle school science program, we're continuing to always look at our science program, but letting you know that one of the measures we use looks like, we're okay with where we're at as alignment, but we will continue to improve those. And then ACT assessments was a focus on how our students perform in that, so just wanted to point those out.
Very good. Any other questions on the assessment updates? Okay. Next item on the agenda is discussion by board members and agenda requests.
I just I had sent John an email last week about the headsets for the elementary schools, and I was just wondering if they did show up last week.
We got an email that they all were
They did show
taken
up?
to the building, yes, I do
Vicky's
remember
saying
that.
yes.
Okay, good. I'm sorry, Bandy, I didn't have the answer for that one.
Yeah,
didn't know.
I remember an email saying they were delivered.
Okay, I could have asked my 4th grader, but I'm not sure he would know.
No, that's good. That's a valid question. No.
Very good. Any other discussion or agenda requests? I believe we do need an exec session tonight, so I will make a motion that the board recess into exec session.
Sorry.
Along with the board attorney, superintendent. Who else would you like in there, John? The financial coordinator, and I think that should be everybody, to discuss matters relating to employer-employee negotiations, whether or not in consultation with the representative or representatives of the public body or agency, KSA 75-4319, B6, with open session to resume in this room at, how long do you think?
Oh, we're talking on,
Probably 30 minutes.
Well, I don't want to sit there longer than we have to. Can we go 20 and then come back and someone,
Could do that.
okay?
So, okay, so then instead of 7:50, let's say to return at 7:55. Yeah. To start at 7:35. Return at 7:55. Have a second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. It's for whatever they call it, employer-employee negotiations, to begin at 7:58.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. 8/20 for the purposes of employer-employee negotiations.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Motion passes.
Yeah.
I saw Tracy's back and I'm like, this.
Psych, let's all run back up. It's fine.
When I see handbags.
She knows the cells.
People had to go to the bathroom.
That's good.
Okay. 3 minutes, you said?
Still missing Paul.
Paul had to go to the restroom and Bill did too.
Okay.
They're not shooting the clock. Yeah, who knows which clock?
That's true.
What?
Did Bill stay in all the executive sessions?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did you guys win this weekend? Uh-oh, where'd you go play at?
We were huge, but learning that we should have won by a lot more. We just played horrible. So, I was trying to cheer my kids. but-
What's that?
Now, Bill didn't leave, did he?
Because I was already worried about
Oh,
playing.
Bill's,
Oh,
He's still
didn't have Bill
coming.
one here, sharp, never mind.
Bill's, we still have 2 minutes, I think.
That's part of it. They'll figure out later.
1 minute, 2 minutes.
Gave up a late that you were like plus 12 for every game or negative 12.
Right.
So we were up 14 to 9. You had 2 minutes left to go. There's 13 teams that are in the playoffs.
Right. Okay, we're good. And call the meeting back to order.
I would make a motion to accept the SEIU tentative agreement with the following modifications. 3% wage increase, removing the language of the state plan health insurance, adding language to vacation and sick leave regarding leave start date and proration, adding shift differential pay, a 1-year agreement contingent upon notifying the Board of Education by noon on Thursday, September 14th of approval. These changes will be given to to SEIU by noon tomorrow after approval by the board attorney.
I second it.
Been moved by Board Member Oborny and seconded by Board Member Fox. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Then I'd also make a motion for a special meeting at 7 a.m. on Friday, September 15th. Or I guess we don't need to make a motion. Anyway, for a special meeting on 7 a.m. on Friday, September 15th to include health insurance, teachers' contracts, and exec session. Anything else? Okay. Meeting's adjourned.